SharePoint 2013 publishing images. In REST API, we're going to take a look at deferred and promises in AngularJS, and we're actually going to go ahead and start building out our blog post section. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look and see what the agenda is. So as I mentioned, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the blog post list. This is a structure that I've built in the background, but we'll quickly walk through the schema that I'm using and highlight some of the key column items. And then what we do is take a look at that blog post using the REST API plugin, yet another Yark, or yet another REST API client that I use in Google. And what we'll do, we'll take a look at publishing images, which is going to be like the main focus, because as I mentioned in the last video, publishing images are a little bit tricky to display because you have to do a double column. We'll talk about that. And then because we have to do a double column, we have to do something special with promises and defer objects. So we're going to take a look at that in AngularJS and see how we can make that happen. And then towards the end, we'll discuss the magic of the image renditions. I think this is one of the most overlooked powerful feature in SharePoint, especially if you're customizing within the publishing feature or publishing sites within SharePoint. All right, let's go ahead and take a look and get started. So what I'm going to do here, let me go ahead and kill this, save this off. And oh, this is just me playing with some HTML stuff, and there's my Amazon workspace, and I have everything but what I am looking for. Okay, let's go back to our home page. And basically, as in the last video, we kind of have this hydrated dynamically using REST API within Angular, and we kind of stopped here with the latest blocks. We put the placeholder images here, but we have to go ahead and start building this out. So let's go behind the scenes and take a look and see what this blog post list looks like. And if I go into the settings here, let's just quickly walk through the schema. Now, what I've done, I went ahead, everything with JP, these are going to be custom site columns that live actually at the root web. And we're going to bring these in directly into this list. And this is just a standard custom list. Now I have the publishing date, which is just a datetime field, as you can see there. Categories, which is going to handle all of the block categories. I just have this as a choice field, so I can easily and dynamically modify this. Obviously, this can be a term store or any other, if you want to do a lookup list or whatever tickles your fancy. I just decided to go with a choice because the REST API is going to be a little bit cleaner in that regard. So a little selfish there, code convenience, if you would. JP summary, this is just going to give us a summary of the blog post. JP content is going to give us the actual details of the blog post. And then we actually have the feature image, which we're going to store here in the JP image. And this is going to be a publishing image. So what this is going to allow is that, you know, as the content editors come in and filling this out, they can just go ahead and drop in a title, specify the publishing date. If they do a future, this should not display until that date hits. Select the category, brief summary. But this is the key. So with the images, I'm not a big fan with having the content managers go in to the image library, grab the URL, and then come and paste that in. I think this is a much better experience to be able to just browse and see the actual photo, select it there, insert it. What we'll do, we'll train them to only use the video or the thumbnail version of that. That has no impact on how the block is going to display. It just helps with the display of the blog post in the actual SharePoint list, but it has nothing to do with the rendering of it. So you see how nice these images are, nice, small, and cropped. And then that way, right here in the list view, they can take a look at the actual feature image as well as the title and a summary of the blog post. And it's just a much easier and better experience. Well, what's easier on the content managers, but it's a little bit tricky for us developers. So let's take a look at what this JSON is going to look like within the browser. Let's take a quick view of that. Let's do this. Let's go to Yark. Let's just paste this in. And this is just what we did last time. So we just underscore API /web lists get by title. This time I'm going to spell title right. and then you just pop in that name. In my case, it's going to be blog posts, and then show me all the items. Okay. And then as far as the request header, as we did last time, we're just going to get the application JSON data is verbose. Now this one, you remember last time I said if you're 2016, you can do the no metadata, it makes things a lot cleaner. But this one, you actually want to go with verbose. The reason being is because we have to do a second call in order to get the images, image information. So let's take a look at the, oh, something did not go right. Oh, I selected the header, but I didn't add it. Okay, so now I have that added to my request. Yeah, I was getting XML there, and I was expecting JSON. So as we saw before last time, we have this reusable function that's going to take care of this, the JSON object, and land us right where we need to be to bring the data back. Everything else, just like what we saw with the job categories, we're going to have somewhere our key information here as far as the information for the blog, the title, publish date, category, yada, yada, yada. That's the big block for the content. But as you scroll through, you would notice that my image, which is JP image or pub image or something like that, does not appear here because that's a publishing type, and by default you're not going to get that on the first go within the return JSON. So in order to do that, what we have to do, we have to do this lookup field. And if we do field values by HTML, this is the key guy. And basically for this one particular item, the one item ID 1, I can make a subsequent REST API call to get the details, additional details for that particular post. So all I'm going to do is just paste that in. Other request pieces will remain the same. And now I get my JP image property or column, which is going to have the actual image tag for the feature image that we want to highlight. Now, out of all of this, because I don't want this image to define the size and of the image, I actually want to have more control of that. And then when we get into image renditions, I will show you how to leverage image renditions to do just that. So really what we're going to do, we're going to actually write another reusable method to where we can just extract this source attribute for that particular image. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get back to our page, and let's do the easy part first, which is just to display the key information for the blog. Okay, so let's go ahead and fire up our project. And where did we leave off? We left off, I think we had like a sample method in the services. So let's go ahead and navigate to services and get blocks. So this should be actually get blog post. So let's go ahead and update that. So get blog post, we allow them to send a max count. I think all this is going to remain true. The URL to this guy is blog posts. That's what we named it. And ordered by modified. Remember, I didn't really understand or really know the true name for the date, and we actually decided to go with publish date. So ordered by publish date, JP publish date, and that's going to be this guy here in descending order, and then we grab the top of the count, and if we're good, we can just go ahead and display this. So let's save this all. I'm gonna close everything but this. I just want to clean this up a little bit because I left it in a certain state, so I just want to make sure I'm tracking where I am. So let's go to the components. Do we have one for blog? Yeah, latest blog. It's grabbing that guy. It's not doing the service call. So let's go ahead and make the service call. So get blog posts, go to our components, blog latest, and we want our on init guy. So let's do, normally I would just go ahead and copy and paste, but let's see how far we can get by memory and IntelliSense. So this is on init. That's an event we want to hook into, and service object, which is this guy here. dot, and then our function call. And right now, let's just hard code this to 8. And then we have to do our then syntax because we're dealing with a promise. And what I like to do, I like to just keep everything uniform. And I use the same variables. Like for all my collection, I always use items. It just makes things so much simpler, and it sets you up for a lot of copy and pasting as well. All right, so this is going to be post. So let's just represent that with the letter P. And actually, I think that's it, right? So the power of reusability. So on the net, we're going to capture that event. It's going to make our service call. We already wired it up last time, and that's it. Okay, so let's just double check our syntax by looking to see what we did here. And all of this still seems to be true outside of dynamically passing in this guy's where we're hard coding this to 8. All right. Okay, so if that looks good, let's go ahead into our template and actually render out the items, which is the array of blog posts. So we go into our blog latest here. We have everything wired up with our placeholder image. That's one of the things that we did in our last video. And looks like the repeatable section is going to be this chunk here. So this div here is what's repeated, showing the summary of the blog post, right? So let's go ahead and collapse all this. Comment these guys out because they're hard-coded. We don't need them anymore. That comment did not work correctly, did it? No, this is not. Oh, you're going to make me delete you. Let's see. Oh, it's crying about something. What is it crying about? Oh, I created this invalid structure, right? Normally, I don't have a problem commenting these out. What's going on today? All right, it's going to force me to delete it, so let's delete them. I always kind of like to save them just in case there's a typo or I have a reference, but we have our template we can fall back on from our original design package, so I'm not going to worry about it. So we're going to repeat this guy here, and ng repeat item in vm.items. Okay, let's just do something very simple. Actually, let's take a look and see what this guy's supposed to look like. If we go to our home page, let's just view this in Chrome real quick. And we're in the blog section. Okay, so we should have an image here, a title, a summary, and then the read more link. And let's take a look. All right, so there's our image. Here's our title. That's our summary. And this is our read more link. Okay, so let's replace the title with this guy here. And again, double curly item dot title. The good news is this remains consistent because that's our default, right? Now the summary, we have to go do a little dig in and inspect our JSON. So let's go back to Yark. Our summary is just going to be this guy here, JP summary. And again, I'm just using the internal name of the site column. So the display name, you can feel free to rename that to make it more convenient for the content editor. But from a coding standpoint, we don't want any special characters or spacing. We want these internal names to be nice and clean and simplistic, okay? All right, so this should be it. So let's see how far did we get. So let's take our template, take our components and services file, and we're going to publish these 3 up. What's going on? It's not going to let me publish. I don't know why I had to do these in 2 batches. All right, so that's my components and services, and let's go up here and grab my template. Oh, I'm almost in design. Never mind. I see what I went wrong. Okay. All right, so if all else fails, again, I'm switching over to Chrome. Anytime I need to do some development or verification or use some dev tools, I want to be in Chrome. Okay. What's happening? Oh, oh, my logo's not wired up to be the default page. Wow, look at that. This is real content, right? So Unilever, the entrepreneur helps, yaga, yaga, yaga. This is real content. That's simple. Okay, so we have titles, we have summary. It's not formatted correctly. We're actually bringing in too much data, but that's something we can correct easily, I think, or somewhat easy. But for the most part, that's it. Okay, let's go ahead and bring in the actual image, and that's the meat of this video. Okay, so to grab the image, let's take a look at the JSON. So this is the root JSON coming from the regular request. And we have to, in order to get the JP image, we have to make a second call to actually get the image property or site column. And in order to do that, we're going to have to make this a field values as HTML call. So I copied that URL. Let's go up here and drop this in. We took a look at this earlier and see how the JP image property is now available, but it comes over as an image tag. So let's go ahead and take care of that. So what I have, if we drop back in our services, what I have is a reusable function that one will make that extra call once the sender sends it in, the caller sends it in, and then extract the source URL from that image tag. So to build this guy, let's just call it get, and it's going to be kind of limited because this function needs to know the column name. So we're going to hardwire the column name with the understanding that anytime we need a publishing image, we're going to use the same column. And that's why this guy is a site column. So let's say get JP image URL. And the caller is going to pass in the actual REST endpoint, the REST API endpoint. And from that endpoint, we're actually going to just make an HTTP call, HTTP GET with the endpoint. And we're going to reuse our get config setting. And this is just going to get the application JSON post request, all that good stuff. And then this is obviously going to be a promise, because anytime we're dealing with AJAX, we're dealing with promises. So we have to do our special notation here. And the return type, this is going to be data. The return is going to be very similar to this. So let's take a look. The return should be data, D, and then our actual property name. And this is why that function is going to be kind of hard-coded, because we actually going to have to hard code. Now there's probably a way, I'm sure there is a way that we can make this more dynamic to where they can specify the column name, but for right now, let's just keep this straightforward. I think it's complex enough with dealing with we're having to jump through these hoops in order to get this value in the first place. So this is going to return that image tag. So let's just call this var image tag, set it equal to this guy. And I think I did this right. Let's just take another look. So D, and then data, which represents the main object, the D property, and then get us down to the JP image property, right? Data, D.jp image. Now I do have an extra D here that represents the parameter, and I kind of want to do this, and I think that's going to give us an error. So mainly because I tried it before and it didn't work, and this is the one that works. So you know what? Let's do this. Let's pretend we don't know what the true property value is going to be, and Deshaun did not go off and run ahead and figure this out, because what's going to happen is that you're going to run into this scenario where it's going to take a couple of tries, and I mentioned this in the previous video. It's going to take a couple of tries to get this right. So let's walk through the process on how you figure that out. Okay, so let's just return D for now. We don't know. Let's pretend we don't know what this guy should be, And we know it's going to be a property, so we say JP. It actually looks like D to represent the object, another D to get to D property, and then JP image. That's what it looks like in the browser, right? So D to represent the overall object, D is the property, drill down, JP image is the guy that we're after. Okay, so that's going to return an image tag. Now what I'm going to do, and I hardly ever do this, I'm going to just drop in a snippet of code because this gets a little bit ugly. And you can actually, I'm gonna paste this in the comment section, so that should be readily available. So you can just grab and copy it from there as well, if YouTube allows me to do that. If not, I'll zip it up and put it in the zip file. But basically, here's the snippet. And what this is going to do, this is going to set another variable up to hold the source value. We're going to pass in this image tag. We're going to make sure it's not empty. And then we're going to do this regex nastiness, which really basically goes in and say, give me the value in this source attribute, nothing after it and nothing before it. So as you can see, what we're trying to extract is this guy here, but we don't want the rendition ID. We don't want any of the styles or any of the other stuff that follows it, and we don't want any of the image tags or any other attributes that that precedes it. So this regex is going to give us very focused and snatches, give us exactly what we need. Okay, and it's going to set it to the source variable, the one that we created, and we just want to return this guy, return the source. Right, so that's the responsibility of this reusable function. Reusable in the sense, as long as you're using JP image, that's why we put the name in the method name, the property name in the method name. You should get the URL that you're expecting, a raw URL that we can reuse. Okay, I'm getting the squiggly. Why? It says I'm missing a semicolon. Is that correct? I don't think so. What did I do wrong? Do you see it? Is it this comment that's throwing things off? Okay, the joy of JavaScript development. You're missing a semicolon. Come on, Deshaun. Where is it? Oh, it said expected comma. Oh man, I screwed something up. Return. Oh. Oh, you have to do a return here. Okay. So return this guy, and I'm missing this right here. All right. So now it's happy. Yeah, I didn't format this correctly. Usually there is a pattern that I type out with the curly braces and a close parenthesis and a semicolon, and I forgot that guy. And you have to do the double return because this is a promise. So one, that's the promise object, and then once hydrated, that's the actual value. So that's why you have the double return. Okay, we're safe now. Green squiggly's gone. Okay, so that's going to return the source. So now what we're going to do in our blog post, we already have data, but we're missing the images. And this data here is going to have every post that's in that list, right? So let's just go and drop this guy into a local collection. So let's just do var collect equals D. This is going to be our local collection. And we want to return column once this is all hydrated. And basically, we just need to iterate through this collection. So this is going to be, So collection dot for each, just do a for each loop on this guy. Generic function for each item. There we go. Let's get this pattern down. And arbitrary variable, we just call it item. And basically item dot, and we're going to make this your property name up. We're going to just dump all the JP image URLs into this image URL. And this is going to again get JP image URL. And now we need to pass in the metadata, I'm sorry, the URL that's going to give us the information. So if we go back to our original JSON, okay, so web/list get by title blog posts, right? And thank goodness this is not case sensitive, /items. So send that guy 404. Oh, Deshaun, you're wasting time. Get by title blog. If you can spell blog right, it's not blob, it's a blog. Oh, come on, guys. Oh, you did it again. Oh no. All right. Okay, so basically what we need to pass is this guy here. So this is a property. So we're just going to grab this guy dot and deferred. I'm just copying and pasting here because I want you to watch the tree. And the good news is this is going to be the same URL property pass anytime that you need to get this JP image, guys. So as HTML and then URI. All right, so that's it. So off of this item, so for each item, you can do an additional call, which is this call here, and that's going to give us all the properties as with their HTML value. How come I didn't do text? I wonder if that would make all that image stripping easier. Huh. Let's look and see what that looks like. Oh, it's empty. That's why you don't do text. You have to do HTML because it is HTML. It would have been nice if they would have just passed back the raw URL and then I wouldn't have to jump through all those hoops. Anyway, so that's why we're doing HTML. But yeah, but here's another thing. Like if you want that whole chunk of content without the markup, right? Because as you know, as a UI designer, they want things to be a certain way, certain font, and don't have the content managers bring in all the other stuff. This is how you get the raw content. Or if you want to build a summary property off of maybe the first 200 characters of the main content, this is how you can strip out all that HTML and do that. So that's another cool trick that you can use to get the actual content without all of the markup. Okay, so where are we? So we have this guy here. So this is URI dot then function. We just represent this U, curly braces, put the semicolon on there, and dump this out. All right, and U is going to be, oh, Deshaun. This is a promise. So you are not going to get what you're expecting. You have to move that down, set it equals there, Control KD to get us formatted nicely. And I think that's it, right? So this guy's going to do all the heavy lifting, make the additional call for us, get the image tag, strip that out, give us the source URL, pass that here. We're going to pass the source URL here in our made up property, and we're good to go. Let's test it out. Let's see how well we did. All right, so all our changes right now are in services. We want to display that in the template itself. The component at this point is just pass through, right? So the controller is just going to go, nothing changed here. So that's going to remain the same. So this is really the service and the template doing the talking. And let's just spit this guy out here. And remember, that's our made up property image URL. And let's see what happens. So let's push up the blog template and let's push up the services template. And let's see if it's magical as they promised. Okay, and let's go here, hit refresh. And we know we're going to run into an issue, right? Because we purposely did not do the JSON property drill down correctly. Okay, so this did not display anything. And we go to the console and JP image is undefined. And basically what it's saying is you guys are up here, you guys are trying to go after a value, but all this is undefined. So really the D is undefined, and we try to do .jp image or something like that, right? All right, so the way to solve this is what I used in the past to solve this, is you need to kind of turn on what I consider turn on your headlights. And I log out these things. So you want to log out different properties. So instead of using it's the same trick as alerts, right? So any JavaScript development, you do a lot of alerts to pop up what the value is. I use the console because it's not that disruptive, and you can log out many different pieces. So so console.log, what we want to do is log out D. Now, let's just image val. All right, so you want to log out D, but you want to use the special method Json.Stringify. And what this is going to do is allow you to convert that JSON to a string to where you can really read it. Else you're just going to get an object. It really just put objects in parentheses, and which is not helpful at all. So to see what's actually in this guy, you want to say, hey, stringify this JSON, and then spit it out. So let's try that. Let's just push this up. And this is going to give us some hints on how deep we need to drill down to get to the actual property. Let's hit refresh. It seemed like it didn't do anything, did it? What happened? Oh, is it throwing the exception before this guy? Positions are everything. All right, console log, refresh. All right, here we go. Now we got some detail. So our call is working, right? Because we seem to have that for each blog post, which is good. All right, so let's figure out what's what. All right, so yeah, so there's our data property, which we don't see in REST API, the YARC, right? So it seems like we have to come in. We already have a D, right? Because we're spitting out the D value. So D dot data dot D dot, and then our JP image, which is in there somewhere. All right, so that kind of gives us a hint of what we need to do. So D dot data dot D, and then JP image. Okay, so let's just comment this out for now. Let's push this up. No, let's do this. So instead of pushing all that JSON, now let's just double check our image tag. Image tag variable. Okay, so image value is, push this up, and we should have a clean image tag. Awesome. So that's where we need to be. Now, this is what it looks like, and then it's going to pass that to that regex nastiness, and that guy is going to strip out our source tag and then get us to where we need to be. And because we're spitting that out, this is the results of that, right? So each guy now has the image tag, and we're ready to rock and roll. I'm sorry, the image URL, okay? All right, so cool. So let's clean up. Let's go ahead and hide this guy. All of our headlights are on. They served us justice. Now we can see. Let's save this off, and let's go to our template now and go ahead and wire this up to where it needs to be. So really, let's just cut this now. You know, we spit that out explicitly. We know what that looks like. And remember, this is our placeholder that we modify to show the image from the site collection. We're just going to go ahead and replace that with the actual image. And then we're going to push this out. So let's go ahead and publish this. And then we would get into the magic of image renditions. Hit refresh. I thought we comment these out. Oh, we didn't publish up to services. Okay. So clean bill of health in the console, and we have images which are blown out of proportion. I mean, really blown out of proportion. Okay. So this is where image renditions come to save the day. All right, so image renditions is a feature that will be enabled once you enable publishing, and it's available, I think, as of 2013 2013, maybe 2010. Very few people use it. Very few people, developers know about it, but it's very handy. And basically what it's doing is that for every image that you upload in the library, and if you're using the right site column type, which is publishing images, which is the one that we're using, which is why we have to jump through so many hoops to get this to work, what it's actually doing, all these dimensions that's defined here, it's actually cropping, not resizing, it's cropping your image to fit this size. So what we can do, we can have our content managers upload something from a raw digital camera, right? Those huge 3500, 3 megapixel, 3500 kilobyte pictures that are high res and full of detail and all this other good stuff, but kills websites because they're too heavy to load, right? So what we can do, we can protect against that by defining a image dimension that we want, and then in the image URL, just simply pass in this query string parameter specifying this ID, and that gives you the cropped version of the image based on the dimensions here. So let's go ahead and create one. So what we need we need some information first. So what we need to do, let's bring in the original template. Let's throw this guy in Chrome. And let's go down to our blocks, and we want to take a look at what this image size looks like. So I just go to inspect, and this is my cool secret voice. And I go to images, 229191. Okay, let's note that. Notepad still handy. 229191. Okay, that's going to be the small version of that. 229191. Okay, so let's go up here and let's just call this. Now you can go in and call these like every instance that you need, like block thumbnail. But this is, I mean, and then if you change one pixel, right, you have a new one, so, and after a while it becomes unruly. So what we're going to do, let's just call this JP Portal thumbnail. And we're going to try to reuse this anytime we need the thumbnail size. The name actually doesn't matter. That's really just from a preference, right? So 229191. And you do not do the pixels here, just put the number, and it will automatically add the pixel there, right? So it's going to display what it's going to be using. And so our ID here is going to be 5, right? So the query string parameter, and you've seen this, we've seen this. If we as HTML, let's go back to our original guy. We've seen this in the image tag that we just stripped out, right? And this is exactly what they're doing. So they're doing the image rendition 4. And you may think, oh, where did 4 come from? Well, when I added this item to the list, remember that drop down, you get to choose a different size for the image. And we selected the smallest size. So that way it displays nicely within the view, the list view. Right? And that has nothing to do with, and I told you, it had nothing to do with the rendering of that image because we're stripping that out. So we're not confined to whatever the content managers are selecting. We're going to dictate what it should be. So basically, here's the image URL, and it's really just query string parameter rendition. And I used to just spell this wrong. ID, and then, oh, you already had that paste. So we're 5, right? ID 5. So every time you deploy, just remember to add in your custom renditions because and add them in the right order, right? So where the IDs match, so that way whatever you specify in dev, that number holds true as you punch up all the way up through production. All right, so let's go ahead and push this out. Oh, again, you're in the wrong project. Push this out. Boom, and hit refresh. And what do we have? Just thinking about it. Now we have some really nice cropped images. And it doesn't matter, right? Even if these guys come in as portrait, right? Or landscape or huge landscape, this is going to be cropped and always fit nicely within this section. Now, the problem that we're going to run into, and this is the designer that kind of did a oops on this. As we kind of squeeze this, the image size, you see how it's getting kind of pixelated? the image size that we're using is really not that great for when we are like in mobile view, right? And we're using the same image, right? So whatever image rendition that you select here, as they, go into responsive mode for whatever it is for this page, that's what they're going to see. So what I would do, I would say, we actually need to kind of go a little bit higher than this, but not crazy high, right? So there's a way that really the magic is in the aspect ratio. It's really not the size itself. So as long as we maintain that aspect ratio, which is the, oh man, I lost it, which is the, where's my original template? The which is at 229,191. As long as you maintain that aspect ratio, we can actually go to like 900, whatever, right? As our thumbnail size. So let's try to figure it out. Let's do aspect ratio online. I'm doing this on the fly. I actually did not. This is exactly what we need. So what we want to, what is it? 229, sorry, my memory is gone. 229,191, right? All right, so that's what we're dealing with. So now let's say we want to bump this up. Say, okay, let's go 750. My height value should be 626. So 750, 626. Now, okay, so we fixed that. We figured it out. So, oh, let's go a little bit bigger, right? So now, because we have ID 5 all over the place, 750, 626, you change it, hit refresh. It may take some time because in the background it's actually going back and recropping. Hit refresh, and now we should have the new dimension size, same aspect ratio, so everything should look pretty, right? Oh, what happened? Oh, because, oh, this designer is, it's not making things easy for us. Inspect. I did not expect this. Max width 100%. That's not going to get it. Oh, yeah, we have to define a custom max width size for this. Okay, so our little trick is not going to work. Oh, wait. Blog box image, unless we do something. Here's the trick. Let's see. Max width. And this is why you have to work with a designer that understands, one, not only responsive design, but dynamic content within responsive design, because you have to use certain tricks like this, like max width, max height, min height, and all this other stuff to get dynamic content within a certain confined space to work most of the time. So max width, let's just say 292 pixels. And that, no, the other one, the other way. 161. Oh, Deshaun. 191. My memory's gone. All right. That doesn't look right. It's maintaining the aspect ratio, but with, oh, the width is 229. Oh, jeez. There we go. That's what we want. So there's a combination of image renditions and then some max width on your CSS. Now, the image rendition is going to ensure that the ratios is the same for all these images, regardless of the difference in ratio. Right? It really that it is. It's the difference in ratio. It's not necessarily the size. It's the ratio that you want to maintain. So once you maintain the ratio, and then everything else should be intact. Now, there's some other cleanup that we have to do to make this pixel perfect and look like the design, but we're not gonna do that now in this video. But if we minimize this, which is not allowing me to do, how come you won't let me shorten this window? Oh, come on, guys. All right, anyway, and if we collapse this to the mobile view, what you would see is, because we have the combination of image never mind. See, I'm gonna have to turn into a designer, and I don't want to have to turn into a designer in this one. All right, so this is not gonna work, guys, unfortunately. So this is a scenario. Oh man. this is a scenario where we have to go back to the designer and say, hey, this is not looking right. Can you help us out? What are we doing wrong? Blah, 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 blah. Because the design should be, we need to collapse with, have to make some adjustments as we shrink and grow this guy. So for now, to do our part as developers, we're forced to use that pixelated image rendition, which was going to look great for the desktop, but it's not going to look that great for mobile view. So we have to go back to our original parameters, which is 229.191, and then go back to the designer and say, hey, we need different max values for these different views. And they have them, right? Because with responsive design, you're going to be stepping through this guy a couple of times. All right, so this is where we need to be. Now we have problems here, which I think I know how to fix, but I'm not going to do that now. We'll pick that up in the next video. We'll play with a little CSS, just enough to be dangerous, right? We're not going to turn into designers, but there are some switches and tricks that we can use to ensure that all of this is uniform. And this is why you need a designer that's used to working with not only responsive design, but dynamic content, because when they did a picture perfect view, right, which what they sell to the business, is say, hey, this is how the title's going to be, this is how the summary's going to be, boom, 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 but there's no variation. So when you see that in the HTML mockup, ensure that all the titles are not 2 lines, you have a mix of single line, and the summaries are not perfect to where they're filling up the space. You have variations in the summary, but we all have to agree that there needs to be a max, right? So this is probably like the bare minimum, where 1 line title, 1 line summary, and then you have your read more. So this was not accounted for with the spacing there. And then in this guy here, you're going to have way more content than what fits in that space. So how can you correct that? Now, some of this we can do in Angular, right? We can do like max, like a character count or something like that, and play with it. But that's that's going to kind of get us like 90% there. The other 10% is going to be with max heights and things along those lines to handle these scenarios to where there is not enough content to fill it in. So, I think most of that comes with the designer. They don't have to know about SharePoint, right? Because you saw how we just lift and shift and dropped this into SharePoint and made it work and get really close to being pixel perfect. But they do have to be comfortable in dealing with dynamic content and not static content, because any CMS is just going to have this type of variation. All right, that's it for this video. That's how you bring in images. We use the promises to make those calls. We did a little bit digging to figure out how to get to the right area within the JSON. And now we're ready to rock and roll. We'll do a little CSS in the next video to make this clean, but I think we're moving on to the details of this and how you saw how we use the image rendition ID to get this ratio. But when we go into the details of this blog, let's go back to our template here, our mockup. When you go, so we're here, right? Yeah. See how they do? They use the exact same title and summary in all 4 of these. That's why it's pixel, and we didn't see that problem initially. All right, so here's another template, right? This is displaying this. We can use a different image rendition ID here, right, to make this a little bit more, interesting, and that may be a little bit different here. So anytime that we have different markup, that's an opportunity to use a different image rendition. And then when you go into a detail, we definitely want to use a different one here, because this aspect ratio is a lot different than the square one, right? So you go from square to rectangle, and image rendition is what's going to guarantee that, even if you're dumping in a portrait photo. All right. So more fun on that. We're going to the details on how we're going to spit this out, different strategies on how we leverage to do that. And I think after that video, we get into the post request, which is something that I saw as a request on a how-to. All right, guys, take care. Another super long video. I don't know if we're going to get under 30 minutes, but hopefully, this is enough value and content to where the time is well worth it. All right, take care. See you next time.